is for everybody. So I'm just going to ask one by one. So we can start with Monica. How was transitioning in the late 90s or early 2000s, or whenever you transitioned? What was that process like for you? And what was that experience like?
Well, it was a process that was basically an underground process. You couldn't just go to your doctor and say, I am experiencing XYZ and I would like to start treatment, or, I would like to receive hormones. Back in the day, you would just go, and we had a one provider that we can go to and pay $10 for a shot. She would sell you a shot of B12. She would sell you a shot of hormones. But you can also too buy your hormones black market. And that was good for in a lot of ways it was good, but then in a lot of ways there may have been some problems, some hiccups along the road. But it was very different. It was very, very hard. Everything was very, again, underground. And being that it was underground black market, there was no regulations. And there was really like no guaranteed safety or protections around what you were doing.
Right.
You were just doing and hoping for the best because this is all we have. And today it's very different. Things are very accessible, very resourceful. And it's good because it was difficult trying to transition back in the 90s than it is today. So I'll pass it on to someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for being so open and honest about that. It's true with the black market hormones, that was an option. Even when I transitioned, I didn't know what I was taking, but I was just following the girls that told me this is what you take. And
Yes.
I'll never forget hearing a story of, I guess these girls were arguing and she was giving the girl testosterone and the girl didn't realize it until she started to grow facial hair. Everything started to go backwards and she went to go get her labs done and it was actually testosterone she was taking. And it just kind of showed, people can give you whatever. And it kind of was just, like you said, you were just going and hoping for the best. So thank you so much for sharing that experience.
You're welcome.
Let's go to, how about you, Regina?
For me, transitioning was not really as difficult because I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. And Atlanta, Georgia was very affluent with transitioning. And so there was a clinic downtown Atlanta where I would go and apply for my hormones. However, they were quite expensive. So just being transparent, back in the day, the girls would go to the doctor and they would steal the referrals that you go and get your they would steal the little referrals from the doctor's office and then charge you to fill them out for you, fill out the prescription for you, and then you go to the doctor and get them filled. So it was you had to do it one way or another. So the girls got their referrals and they went and got their hormones. But it was very much like Monica said, it was black market.
Right.
It's very black market. I mean, everything was done, without having labs, without knowing how your body was going to take it. We weren't getting the checkups every 90 days. So very black market.
No, it's true. And I think that's what individuals who transition nowadays, I don't think they realize, the experience of those who transitioned before us and who went through that process so that we could have these resources and go through all of this so doctors know to be competent, doctors know to do their research, because it took individuals going in saying, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'm going through, before doctors kind of changed and realized, okay, well, we need to look at all of the patients that are coming in and we need to understand what's going on. So thank you so much for that. How about you, Yasmine? Oop, I think you're muted, love.
I'm sorry. I'm similar to them. I started off with black market hormones and I did it for about like 15 years. I remember the first time getting hormones, I asked one of the girls, like, where do you get it from? And, you know, she handed me a handful of Premarin and another handful of like spirulactone. And she told me, like, here you go. Like, you know, I never want to see you dressed like a boy again. And she just is like, you know, this is going to get you started. And I was like, okay, well, how do you get it after this? And she was like, oh, just come to me. But then I started meeting other people, and this is around the time of like inhousepharmacy.com, which you can't get it there no more. Before, you didn't need a prescription. You just order it with a credit card or debit card, and it'll be shipped to your house. And then I found a bunch of other overseas pharmacies that were willing to ship to the United States without prescription. So basically, I just ended up ordering like boxes and boxes of them. And like you said, we weren't really sure what we were taking, but I kind of did as much research as I could. This is, again, back like 20 years ago, where Yahoo had the groups where they would tell you about the different hormones and different things that you can get. So I was kind of like playing with it, I guess, experimenting with what worked for me. Luckily, I was okay by the time that I went to a doctor to finally get my labs and everything tested. You know, I was fine, and no severe damages were done to my body. But that's not everybody's story. And for the record, I won't recommend anybody buying hormones from anybody else. Go to the doctor. I know some places may not allow you to be able to get prescriptive hormones from a provider in certain states and areas. I know that's unfortunate, but I would not recommend for anybody to self-diagnose or induce the hormone treatment, because you could be doing a lot of damage to yourself.
You know, you're very, very right about that. And I thank you for saying that, because a lot of the times you see it and you're like, oh, I'll take a pill. Oh, let me take another one. And not realizing what it's doing to your body. It can make your blood really thick. It can do so many things. And it's funny that you mentioned in-house pharmacy, because very, very familiar. I
met you a long, long time ago, before everything. And I remember you were hanging around my brother Piff, which is your dad, and Valerie, which was one of my sisters. And I remember you telling them that you wanted to transition, and they had asked me about it. And I was like, I told them, how I got it. And they kind of got it the same way. Right. Well, Valerie did, at least. Piff is not trans, but trust me, I know you were around the same time around where we were getting it from in-house.
Absolutely. I was like, I think it was called Perlato. It was something. Whatever it was, I was taking
Pertadil or whatever. It was, I don't know, some Mexican hormone.
Absolutely. So I want to switch gears a bit and talk about, because now the beauty of 2021 is we see trans folks in all types of employment. We see, trans folks being lawyers, doctors, in political positions, being political candidates, which is amazing. But I want to talk about what was seeking employment like back then, and anybody can jump in on this.
Employment for me back then, actually, I'll start off with the worst of it and then get to the better. Back then, you had to be passable. And what I mean by passable is you had to be the ideal standard of feminine and what would appear to be non-discreditable woman, like unequivocally woman in everybody's eyes. If they seen you, they had to have not been able to spook you to be able to work a job. At least here in Orlando, that's how it was. I've applied for many of jobs, and the only jobs that I was really able to get were like McDonald's and things like that, where, it depended on who you knew, they were willing to hire you. But the customers and dealing with the public was one of the most crucial and traumatizing experiences of my entire life, starting off in the beginning of my transition, because people were so nasty. The customers were very nasty. They called me all kind of names. People threw things at me. It was like, wow. And it got me to a point where I had decided that I want to do this. Like, I'm just going to find out how to make the money out of other way, and I went to the good old, like, had to get the money how I knew best. And that discouraged me a lot before I was able to become what I consider passable. Now, fast forward 15 years later, after the first 5 years of my transition, things were easier. You know, I had got my name changed. I got all that stuff done that made it easier for me to walk into these people's jobs and then tell them, hey, my name is Yasmine, and then respect the fact that my name is Yasmine and call me Yasmine and call me she and her and the pronouns that I preferred. But prior to, you know, early 2000, well, mid 2000s rather, because I would say it didn't really kick in until like 2010, where we were able to get jobs even if you weren't passable.
Right.
Now, 2010 to 2021, there has been a drastic change in how you see trans folks employed, at least trans women. Now I see them everywhere employed. Now I have my own organization, which is called RISE, Real Inclusive Sustainable Employment, which I am co-founded with Shay, and we are able to provide those resources and skill sets and knowledge and resume building and everything that is necessary for you to be able to walk into an employer's office and be confident within yourself, you know, because it's not just about walking in there and getting the job. It's about making sure that you are put together well enough where they respect it, you know, because people still have biases. Regardless of how progressive we are, we still have people that have biases against us.
No, it's so true. You know, one piece that you spoke on that I want to highlight is the name change piece. And that's something nowadays people I don't think about often, because we have amazing programs where you can go through and get your name changed. But I don't think people who transitioned recently can imagine going somewhere where the ID didn't match, you know what I mean? And having to just hope that they're going to take your application, or hope.
Oh, baby, it was like the worst thing, because I remember I was in Georgia and I was in college at the time, and I just wanted to get a job. I just wanted to feel like I was just done with the you know, sex work, and I was done with all that part of it, and I just wanted to feel normal. So I remember thinking, okay, I can go work in a call center. You know, they don't gotta see me. All they do is hear me. So that would make maybe easier. So I remember, you know, getting the interview, and I remember having to walk in there and they called my previous name. And when I like put my hand up, everybody in the room just looked at me like, what? Like, you know, at that point, I was like, you know what? I got to get this done. I got to get my name changed, because this was mortifying. It was the most embarrassing thing that I could have done, because it wasn't like they discreetly like called me. They called me in a waiting room full of people, and I had to get up and walk in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Monica, you want to add to that?
Sure, I'd like to touch bases on that, especially about the part about being, you had to pass in order to be able to get that job. And then after being passable, being able to pass, it was an issue about ID. And a lot of us wasn't born with those gender neutral and gender fluid names, first names.
Right.
And so you may pass and get all the way to the interview phase, whereas they're like, bring in your social security card, your state ID, you're hired, and we need to go through this process. But at that point in time, there was no way of flipping your name. And so that was automatic. Okay, we'll call you back. But then on the flip side too, because the girls were always the children, the girls, we were always somewhat resourceful, because, you know, back then in the 90s, there was a ton of rooting. You know, you had to root to survive, and you can get someone to print you a state ID if you were connected, or if you had those resources to pay for that connection. You could get that state ID, and then you could, you know, sail on. So it is a big difference when you pass, but then your name don't match your identity. And so there's always something that's going against you. Back in the day,
Right.
There was always something that went against you. And yeah, so it's great to see where we are today again.
Absolutely. It's like you got through one door, hit another door, and then hit another door. It was just kind of that constant thing. What about you, Regina? Did you want to add something to that?
Yes, my experience was just as Monica stated. I was what you would consider privileged. So I would always, the interview process and everything would go well. And then they would say, let me get your ID and your social. And then it would seem like it would be forever when they would come back out with the paperwork because they've been in the office trying to figure out what in the hell is going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I went through some processes. I would always get the job. I would always work 3 or 4 times harder than anybody to be promoted. I've always had to go the extra mile to be treated fairly. So as far as getting a job, it was never a problem. Once I got my information changed, it became much, much easier. The process was much easier. Until someone spilled my tea, until someone, because even with your information changed, people are messy.
Exactly.
So when someone spills your tea, there's always the rocky times of them getting used to that. I didn't know that. And it shouldn't be like that. You should just be able to work because I let people know off rip. I didn't come to work for you to be up under my clothes. I came to work to, do a job. So it was just like I had the same problems as Monica. I went through those.
That's crazy that Regina had mentioned that people at the job is messy. I remember working for a big retail designer store, and one of my coworkers were my friend that I grew up with, and he did my hair. He was one of the children. He did my hair. So we were working together, and I remember one day I was off, and my girlfriend calls me. She's a cisgender woman. She calls me and she said, "Hey, Yasmine," she was like, I just want to let you know that there's some people here at work talking about you, and I recorded the conversation, and such told them that your name is not Yasmine, your name is this, and they were saying. I was wondering why she wasn't answering when I was calling her that name, but I was thinking they were calling the other person whose name was another person who's had the same name as my previous name. I was thinking that they were talking to me. So when it came to my attention that my friend of a long time was in the space telling these girls my tea, like, oh, that she's not a she's a he, and this is her name, his name, da 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 da, however he said it. I was like, when I found out, I was not only embarrassed, but I was hurt that somebody, a member of our alphabet community, was so disrespectful to the point that they told the entire staff, and it went around like wildfire. So I was wondering why people were looking at me funny and talking to me strange, but not really directly asking me what they wanted to know. So I went to my HR and I said, listen, I didn't fill out the application with my previous information for a reason, but I did let you know when you hired me what the situation was. Although all of my legal papers were changed and my ID and gender mark and everything was changed, I still let them know just in case there was any issues or concerns, because I was dressing and styling women, and I had to make sure that they felt comfortable with me being able to be in the same space as them in such a private moment. So they were respectful. Everybody was fine. And even the people that the customers that knew, they didn't care. They just loved the fact that I was fabulous and I could style them, and they appreciated it. But what Natalia said, or Regina said, was very true. It is very messy people. And mostly it's not people outside of our community, it's the people within our community, especially the other alphabets, that be the first people to disclose our business before we even get an opportunity to.
It's so true. And it's mind-blowing when you really think about it, because the concept of outing is, one, they feel like they have something that they need to tell or that you're not telling, so they want to do it for you. But I don't think people realize how the danger that could have put you in, that could have cost you your job.
Imagine being able to walk out the door and somebody just knocks me over the head at night while I'm walking out to the car. And I just kept saying that to my friend, well, my former friend, like, you don't even understand what kind of danger you put my life in. You don't know who could be crazy, who could be sitting here just having an issue with me being who I am and decide that they are going to wait till I get off because they know where I work now and harm me. And he was like, oh, girl, everybody knew your tea. Like, you weren't fooling nobody. I said, regardless of the fact whether or not they knew, no one came to me and ever directly questioned it or asked me. No one came to me and ever said they felt uncomfortable with me dressing them or being in their space when they're getting dressed. It wasn't until you brought it up to the staff that it became an issue.
No, absolutely. And it's always like a disguise of, oh, they knew anyway, so it doesn't matter. It does matter. You're supposed to be my friend. You're supposed to be my family member, and you're supposed to have my back. You know what I mean? I always tell people, even if they knew, you say, what are you talking about? That's not for you to say. If I say it, that's one thing. If I tell you,
that's exactly what I said. It happened more than once. You know, at my current job, it happened. A gay boy, you know, told the girls at my job, one of the girls that I was hanging with, that I was trans, and she randomly said, she said, hey, Yasmine, she's like, can I ask you a question? And she said, how much did everything cost? And I said, oh, everything costs. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, I was just like lost. And she said, you know, all the stuff that you did. And I was like, girl, what are you talking about? She's like, girl, I know. I was like, okay. I was like, why?
Right.
Why do you want to know how much everything costs? I was like, who told you this? Anyway, she said, oh, the gay boy, you know, he told me. I said, I don't even know him. Right. We don't know each other. We've never talked. We've never had a conversation. I don't know this man. I don't even know why he told you, but because you're my friend, because you've been at my house, because you've met my other friends, I'm just going to let you know, yeah, I am trans. And she didn't have an issue with it. The girl's been at my house. She's hung around me outside of work. So I figured she kind of already knew, but I never outright told her. Right. But it was when he definitively told her was when all the questions came. What did you get done? How much did that cost? This, and that. I'm like, why? Why do you want to know that? Like, why is that even important? Like, do you care about me as your friend? Do you respect me as your friend? She's like, yeah. I said, then none of that matters, right?
People just don't realize how like rude and disrespectful it is to ask somebody that. Like, nobody has that conversation outside of people being trans. I mean, I guess if there are people who are like super love surgery or whatever the case may be, but I just hate how individuals feel that they can come up to us and just ask something like that. So,
right. I said to her, like, you don't just go up to a cis woman and say, hey, how much did your boobs cost? How much did your nose cost? How much did this cost? Like, it feels like whenever where it's a trans person, you feel kind of okay with just asking us very imposing questions, right? And then in a sense, you guys think we're obligated to tell you the information that you want to know, as if Google doesn't exist. And if you want to research what my titties cost or my nose costs or my body parts cost, then why don't you go look it up yourself? Like, why is it that you feel like we're comfortable enough to have this conversation? If I'm not even having this conversation with my own family, why am I going to have this conversation with you, a stranger?
No, absolutely. I want to switch gears a bit and talk about safe spaces. So many trans folks have found community within the pageant scene, the ballroom scene. What were some safe spaces for you, and where did you find community? And we can start with Monica.
So, safe space for me. Growing up in the 90s, safe space was wherever we pitched space, wherever we took up space. That's just how it went in the 90s. And if we found ourselves confronted by violence, it was a different type of violence. The most you're going to see is bricks, a bottle, a stick, a knife, some mace. And that was something that we were able to match. And so we didn't run from the confrontation because we believed back then that we got to stand up to them one time and one time only. After we have that first confrontation with them, we won't have a confrontation again. And that created us the ability, afforded us the ability to be able to go wherever we wanted. We challenged the South Side, the West Side, what we call Boogie Boyville. We challenged them to run us off, to tell us that we're not welcome. And we stood on that. And so for me, safe space was being in community with other sisters, other people from community. And then we had houses that was considered to be safe spaces because you did everything there. You come there and get dressed for the very first time. You come there, play cards, have dinner, sort out your problems, and get support. So safe space was always amongst community.
No, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Regina?
My safe space was the community, pageantry. I began doing pageants back in the early 90s. Club. I was a club girl. I was always out at the clubs. And then I was introduced in 1996 to ballroom. And ballroom became my thing. The ballroom, my house became my family. And it was ballroom for me, you know, from the 96 till like 2004 when I moved back to Florida. I was really, really heavy into the ballroom scene. And so we spent a lot of time together. We traveled together. So those were my safe spaces. Go ahead.
And really quick, for those who are viewing who may not be familiar with the ballroom scene, can you give like a little description and kind of like what was the experience like for you?
Ballroom is okay. The way you were chosen back when in the early 90s for ballroom, you were chosen if you had qualities about yourself that they saw and they liked. It would be the parents, usually the parents of different houses, scouting for their children. They would call you their children. And so I did pageants. And so I had a young man come up to me one night and he said, "How you doing? I saw you tonight doing your show. And I wanted to know, would you like to come walk?" Because this was before my transition. So he asked me, did I want to walk up in drags? And I was like, I would love to. So I went to a house meeting that following Sunday. And I met the mother of the house, him. I met all my brothers and sisters. And we had like a Sunday dinner. And it was, ballroom back then was just really, really family oriented. So we would get together and do family stuff. And then when it came to ball day, whatever your category was, you prepared for it. Ballroom is when you come down a runway and you face from 7 to 8 judges. And if you don't appease their eye, they chop you. And if you do, you get perfect 10s. So I was one of those very stern ballroom girls who came out her first ball, and I won because I told them, "How dare you all act like this is a competition?" Because I was walking against the legendary mother of another house, but we did not. There was no comparison in the looks when we were standing side by side. So I asked the judges, "How dare you? Don't play with me." Because we standing up here and I know that my beauty is radiating past this child. And so I won the category. And they kind of took me for like a ballroom guru that didn't play with, the judges. If I lost, I wanted to lose because I fairly lost. You weren't going to try me on some political or this is, she's a legendary mother of a house. No, you give this category to who deserves it.
No, absolutely.
So, but I loved ballroom. I walked heavily to, like I said, through 2004. And I kind of fell away because I started spending a lot of money to travel all the way to Atlanta, Georgia. And then I would get there prepared for my category, and someone would go to fighting and they would close the ball. So I'm making a return this year in September,
Yeah.
and this will be my return to ballroom
Oh,
after a long hiatus.
that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. How about you, Yasmine?
Well, I definitely started in ballroom, just like Regina. I started attending balls and like clubs and pageants way before I was even old enough to be in the place. But I didn't start walking balls until like the early 2000s. And I started off with the House of Legacy, which turned into the House of Con, which turned into the House of West. So I just kind of followed them all the way through, which is my current house. I am Barbie West. I walk runway. I used to Vogue until I got hurt. And then I was like, no, baby, I'm done slamming myself on these people's floor. Let me just go here. And I know I can walk circles around the girls. But yeah, I started off in ballroom. My safe space was ballroom because it was what taught me how to be very tough. Ballroom, either you got it or you don't. And they don't have no qualms about telling you they don't sit for you. You know what I'm saying? It's very tough, and it's like you either gonna have very thick skin, or you're gonna be extremely sensitive, and you're gonna just like leave. I decided that I needed to learn how to stand up for myself, and of course, being that I was in one of the Battle Cat houses. Natalia knows she was a ebony. Well, she is an ebony, and I'm a con, and we were competing housing, like battling houses, physically battling houses. And I decided that I wanted to be a part of the house that I knew. Oh, excuse me. That I knew that I was going to be protected in, and that everything was going to, work out. Where if nothing else, I wouldn't be tried. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And outside of ballroom, just being a girl in the scene, I wouldn't be tried, because if you did, you knew who the con father was, and you knew who all the con boys were, and they weren't going to play the radio with you, especially about the femme queens. But ballroom has been great to me personally. I love it. I'm still a part of the ballroom scene. I will be walking a ball on my birthday on May 1st here in Orlando called the Emerald City Ball. So if you are in the Orlando area, come check it out.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for those who are viewing, if you're familiar with the show Pose highlights the ballroom scene. So these individuals are some who really walk balls that Pose is based off of. So I want to, Monica hit on this a bit, and I wanted to ask, and anyone can jump in. How did you navigate the discrimination and violence that you faced back before we had major protections in different cities, proclamations on Trans Day of Visibility like we do now? How did you kind of navigate that? And what did you do to kind of keep your head up through all that you were going through? And anybody can jump in on that.
Well, you had to learn how to fight. I come from the era where you weren't going to be for lack of a better explanation, no punk. You were going to defend yourself because you had to. We had to show the trade that, baby, we're going to beat you out your shoes if you try us. You know what I'm saying? We're going to beat you out your shoes. Not only am I going to beat you, but my sister's going to beat you, and they're going to beat you all the way down the street. So you were going to either respect our presence or just leave us alone. Today, I feel like you can't really do that, because they not fighting like how they fought back then. We fought hand to hand. Today, they just come in and shooting you up, and you don't even know who is a person behind the trigger.
Right.
So you got to be more mindful that you don't just go run up against a bear and you get the bear trap. You know what I'm saying? I think that navigating through the things that are happening is just trying to keep your head down. For me personally, I had disappeared off the LGBT scene for a while. I decided that I was going to go to college. I got my degrees. I decided that I was going to work in the corporate world. I was going to just live my life as a woman and not with a trans disclaimer at the beginning, not because I wasn't a proud of myself being trans. I just wanted a fair shot at being able to be respected, what I'm saying, and not harmed by people.
Absolutely. How about you, Monica?
So for me, a lot of, like Yasmine said, you had to stand up to the violence. And because I came up in the 90s, there was a different type of violence. There was real police violence. We feared the police more than we actually feared the community. Like the community was like child play. Like, child, bag up. I ain't got time for that tonight. I got to get past Tilly. I got to get past Vera, you know? And for me, I was a girl who I wasn't fortunate enough to get around police violence. Police violence played a big part of my youthful years when I should have been protected and should have been nurtured and guided in different ways that fostered my true talent. I didn't have that luxury because one, I wasn't kicked out from my family, I wasn't kicked out of community, but it just wasn't, they didn't know how to process you being gay, openly gay, trans. We didn't even use the word trans back then, but it was just like all too much. And so you're there, but you're not there. And I endured years and years and years of police brutality, brutality at the hands of the PIC. And what I did was I had to learn the law. I had to learn the law so that I can stand up for myself when I said enough was enough. Yeah, I learned how to apply the law to protect me because the community can tell you one thing, mama and daddy can tell you one thing, but when you're out here in the real world and people want to take your livelihood from you because you're trans, because you're black, because you're a black trans woman, black trans man, uh, you gotta live. I gotta pay my rent. So if you're gonna fire me because of transphobia, racism, or some fucked up other technicality that violates my basic human rights, well, I gotta fight for that. I gotta fight for that. And that's something that I pride myself on, is that I learned the law, I learned how to apply the law, I learned how to advocate for laws, and that has been my saving grace. Because again, it was very different than what it is now. Today, I'm more afraid of community than I am of the police, because now I don't have those issues with police, but I have those fears of community because community is so unaccepting. There's so much rhetoric about restorative justice, safe, affirming spaces, all inclusive spaces. But if these spaces were so safe and affirming and all inclusive, I don't have to make signs that says trans lives matter.
Right.
I don't have to have visuals for my sisters because someone didn't rescue them or didn't provide an opportunity for them. And so we have to make it for ourselves. We have to stand up for ourselves each and every day. And we have to show up in our true, authentic self. And in that, you got to fight fire with fire, and that's something that I've always held as the Bible for me. If you bring me fire, I'm bringing it back. I'm giving it back. And I follow my intuition. If my first mind tells me that's something jinky or sketchy, I'm not going to wait and see. I'm out.
Exactly.
Right? That's intuition. And that intuition, we all are born with that, and you have to follow that. If you're in a situation and you're like, something's off, there are people, it's so funny you said, there are people who sit and wait, and it's like, no, I'm out. Yeah, I'll let somebody else figure it out. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And knowing the law is so important. And, to Yasmine's point, it's like, now people are just shooting and killing. When you look at the way that trans individuals are killed, specifically Black trans women, I mean, you see stories of eyes gouged out, set on fire, shot, all of these things. And it's like, it's not just going out and worrying about fighting or something like that. It's you don't know who it is. It could have been a friend of a friend, or it could have been someone that you matched with on a dating app who didn't like it. I mean, there's so many possibilities that come with that. And I think that's the piece that people don't understand, is that it's not, living authentically is one thing, but when people target you for living authentically,
it's
like,
just getting more extreme. You know, I think that we didn't have the kind of knowledge about the statistics, because it wasn't something that they considered to be important enough to tally off separately. They just kind of counted it as another male murdering another male, or whatever, male victim, instead of identifying them as a trans victim or trans female victim. I think that now that it is being brought to the forefront, I think two things are happening. It's making it more aware, but it's also making us a bigger target in people's eyes. You know, I feel like somewhat it's like a damn if you do, damn if you don't. Like when we were not so visible, we were concerned about our well-being and our livelihood, but it wasn't to the capacity that we are today. Now, today, we have to be concerned if someone sees this broadcast and we're walking down the street and this person says, "Hey, aren't you Yasmine? I've seen you on the Facebook thing," and pow, right in your head he goes. You know, and it's like, how do we have conversations with our legislative branch, our governors, our senators, our mayors, about making sure that they are advocating for our rights, right? And it's not just only for some of us, the community constituents' rights, but all of us, because we exist in the communities just like our cisgender counterparts do, right? We exist in these spaces and we always have. Now, why is it that we have to be concerned whether or not our perpetrator will be charged with a hate crime, or if he's going to be charged with a crime at all? Because people have the panic defense or whatever they have out there that makes it okay for people to say, "Oh, the killing was justifiable. She tricked him, or maybe she might have tricked him, but she looked so much like a woman that he may have thought that she was a woman, and he decided that he was going to kill her when he found out otherwise." But we don't offer those same conclusion when it comes to cis women when they're murdered.
It's so true. It's 100% agree with you. Regina, did you want to add anything to that?
I was very much a combination of both of these ladies. I was a fighter. And so you knew, or you heard, or you knew, like the way I present myself, you're not going to just run up on me because I let you, you know, I have a very discerning spirit. So when I go in certain environments, I know that I need to be prepared, you know, for whatever. I've always been very outgoing. I've always been in areas, you know, I have a past, you know, so I've always been in some areas that were not so, maybe people would say friendly when it came to our lifestyles, but I knew how to carry myself in those areas. I knew how to speak, how to walk, how to talk, you know, and so I never really had a lot of those problems. However, I was prepared, you know, for whatever. I was always prepared for whatever. You know, I had a gun in my purse, fully loaded and ready for whatever. So that was one of the things that I exude confidence. And one thing about a person who exudes confidence, I don't care what area you're in, they look at you, and whether they know something about you or not, they know they have to think twice. Honey, did she hold her head up a little bit high? I might better, you know, let her make it. And I was honestly one of those girls, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's why I am the first to stand for my girls. You know, I would jump in front of a sister quick because every girl doesn't have that privilege of being passable. Right. Every girl does not know how to act or, you know, or walk or talk. So I'm the first one to jump in front of those girls and say, "Hey, you got to come through me."
Right.
You know, let her pass. You know, I'm very protective of the girls. But you know, my biggest fight probably was work, you know, at my job. You know, I would have to fight physically, not physically, but I would have to fight with the knowledge that I knew. And I would have to tell my manager, you're being homophobic. I feel like you're trying me. Because
Right.
why do I have to do this, and this for my position, but then you have the cisgender women not doing nothing?
Right.
You know, I had a problem with that, and I would call them on that. And regardless of their uncomfortability with me calling them out, they had to respect me.
Of course.
And that was one thing with all my supervisors. They said we have to respect Regina because Regina gonna tell you what's on her mind.
Right.
So you're not gonna play with me. Yes, I did. I knew I was gonna have to do a little extra step or two, but I did that. But when it was my extra step or two was taken, I wanted my money for it.
Absolutely.
When Susie Q got a raise, Regina needed a raise.
Absolutely.
I just was very adamant about being treated fairly. So I will fight for that. I will fight for that. You weren't gonna treat me any kind of way. So, I've always and I knew that eventually I needed to work for myself.
Right.
So now I have my own business. I have my nonprofit. And I still work, but I work on my own. I make my own schedule. I'm
Right.
not told what to do. I have nobody micromanaging me because I know I can't have someone over me because I know how to do my job times 10 in anything that I do. But I just don't want that disrespect and the stuff that comes with working up under people.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect segue into the next question. I want to start with Monica. What initiatives are you working on? And if you want to highlight anything, we'd love to know kind of what you're doing out in the world.
Well, so first thing I'm working on, I'm always working on law. I am a freelance paralegal as well as a co-founder of a nonprofit, Triumphant Together. And currently at Triumphant Together, we offer healing circles every second Friday of the month. It's virtual. It's led by a licensed clinician, and she's friendly, she's kind, she's Black, and she's good at what she does. And then economic empowerment is our second focus, and we are getting ready to launch our healing wellness products. I don't know if you can see that. And so these are dupe sticks, and dupe sticks are like a part of my healing daily practices, as well as candles and essential oils. And so Triumphant Together will have its own healing wellness products. And the shop will go live April 18th, which is our 3rd-year anniversary. And safety, we are working on developing a safety app that acts and responds to the growing needs for safety for Black women, not just. And when I say, I don't like saying trans women because I feel like when I say trans, I do us an injustice because we are just women. We're just a woman. We are just a woman, and we're not missing anything. We have children. We have a period. We have our moods. We have our lover. We have our jobs. We have our things. We have our knickknacks and our cravings. So I like to just say women. No pun, no harm, no shame or anything for anybody, but it's just my philosophy that we're just simply women. That's how I've always been raised. That's how I always groomed myself to be a reflection of a woman. And I don't have to go around and always say I'm trans. But safety is a big, big demand right now. Safety and economic opportunities for our sisters. Our sisters need real, tangible, gainful economic opportunities that are not just like penny pinching them of all their goods, all their knowledge and resources, but then they're still unable to pay their light bill. They can only live in the slums. No, what would it look like for us to be paid like every other professional? What would it look like for us to be treated fairly and compensated fairly for not just our stories, but our actual talents, our IP, our intellectual properties? We are talented. We are crafty. We are designers. We are all of that, just like everybody else, because we are just like everybody else. We're human. And we are born with the inept qualities that everyone has. We're brilliant, and there's no denying that. And so, economic opportunities, safety, and healing is our priority over here at Triumphant Together. We're based in Central Florida. We do a lot of direct response, direct actions. We get a call, we are there, we're responding. Due to the pandemic, we're not in the physical, but we are definitely making sure that we can act and respond to the calls that come through. And every day someone is calling, whether it's domestic violence, eviction, incarceration,
Right.
lack of food, or safety. And so the calls
Absolutely.
are coming. And yeah, Triumphant Together, like all other organizations that are led by white gay men, white passing men and women that are getting these multi-million-dollar grants, multi-year grants. These grants need to be shifted
Right.
and poured into Black woman-led organizations. You know who we are. You know that we're doing the work. You know we're on the ground, taking all the calls that you won't take
Right.
because you don't do direct actions. We're doing direct actions because we are grassroots organizers, grassroots organizations, but we're underfunded, underrepresented, and underprotected. And how can that be in 2021?
Absolutely. You're so right. I mean, fund the individuals who are doing the work. That's the biggest
Yes.
thing, is that you see these grants going to organizations that constantly get them. And that's great,
Yes.
because every organization does their work, but fund those
Yes.
grassroots organizations that are actually on the ground helping
Yes.
people. Thank you so
Yes.
much for sharing that. How about you, Yasmine? You want to talk about the initiative you're working with?
Yeah, so I am currently co-founding and running Rise, which is real, inclusive, sustainable employment. As Monica explained, we are here to provide opportunities and skill set trainings, resume building, give you educational opportunities, help you with things like most people would consider to be easy, like FAFSA, applying for school, getting you signed up, and getting you prepared for interviews. We have just completed a collab with Divas in Dialogue regarding employability skills, and it went amazing. And a few of the participants ended up leaving there and getting gainful employment and getting paid what they desired, which was a great thing for us to be able to get feedback on. Also, Monica talked about safety. I have actually co-founded the Trans Safety Protection Project with OG King, a trans man here in the city of Orlando, and we're actually getting ready to roll out. We're going to be doing seminars, trainings, safety protection trainings. We're going to be providing tools to protect yourself, gift bags, little rings that have devices on there to be able to give a stun. We're going to be providing you with a gift pack with, mace, and also we're going to give you a stun gun and lots of other goodies. So look forward to that coming up. We're going to be literally giving you a self-defense training course, and you're going to be working with a trained self-defense instructor who will teach you how to survive and be able to get away, from ground fighting to being able to from being able to defend yourself from someone attacking you from the back. It's really important that we teach each other how to protect ourselves and how to survive in our community, that in the communities that we live in retrospectively, because as we've seen, the numbers of trans murders are not decreasing. They are increasing every year. They're increasing more so this year every month than
Right.
it was last year.
Right.
And it is definitely a call to action that needs to happen, and it's happening, and it's coming to you very soon. Look out again for the Trans Safety Protection Project. And of course, Shay and I are working on Rise. We do a lot of freelance and collab work. So if you ever are looking for someone to come and work with your organization and help out and teach, your participants some new skills, definitely look us up, Shay Cutliff, Yasmine, And I know we don't have much time, so I'll let Regina talk about her projects as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And go ahead, Regina. We'd love to hear about what you're working on.
I'm working with Florida Transformation Initiative. I was the co-founder along with Tatiana Braxton, Candy, and Ashante. And so what we do is we're running a cohort where we have 10 individuals that attend our course. The first week we did a leadership course. The next cohort we're going to do safety, which we will be reaching out to Yasmine and OG to assist us with that class. The third cohort will be prevention, in which Mulan will be joining us for that cohort. And then our last will be holistic. So it's been a really, really great experience. I'm also geared up to do a COVID relief grant that we're actually have everything kind of set up. We're just kind of waiting for the funds to come in, and we're going to do a grant for individuals going through, the COVID, trans individuals, non-binary, that's going through COVID, things that they went through, and we're also working on. I'm also working on the Black Girls Rule. That's part of, our whole, that's where the initiative came from. So we're all, like one big family doing these different things. So
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
I'm so excited to hear all the amazing work that all of you all are doing. And if you haven't heard it, thank you. Thank you for being on the ground. Thank you for doing the work that big organizations say they're doing, but they may not really be doing. Thank you for actually boots on the ground, doing the grassroots work and helping these individuals out. And thank you so much for being open, being honest, telling us your stories, no matter how raw they are. And thank you for paving the way for us. So now there's resources and there's places that you can go, and these individuals that are transitioning now more recently have it a lot easier than you all did. So last thing I want to bring up, as we all know, there is a horrific trans sports ban bill that is being presented and voted on. We have 2 action items that folks can take to help us stop these bills. First and foremost, you can email the members in the Senate Health Policy Committee and Florida leadership and tell them to vote no on trans sports bills. And also you can join us for our virtual days of action starting today. I think there's about an hour left of it. And if not, it goes on each day, and we'll be calling legislators and asking them to denounce the anti-trans bill. So if you look in the comments section, there are links there. Once again, you can email the members of the Senate Health Policy Committee and the Florida leadership and tell them to vote no on the trans sports bill. And you can also join us for our virtual days of action. At the end of the day, kids should just be able to play sports. It's not about being trans. It's not about anything. We need to stop messing with the youth and stop using that as an excuse and just let kids be kids. So once again, I want to thank all of my amazing panelists. I want to thank everyone who viewed today, and I hope everyone has an amazing Transgender Day of Visibility. Live out loud, live proud, and be yourself. So thank you all so much and have a great day.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.